Today I start the video with an obligatory shot of the New York City skyline. No matter where I am filming, if I see the New York City skyline, I will always film it. The first time that I saw New York City was in 1985, when I flew over from England to work for the summer. And the plane flew directly to the side of the city as we headed to Newark Airport. It was the most magical thing I had ever seen. This video is a full narration of the Grand Street Bridge and the Newtown Creek. If you like this type of presentation, then please feel free to like the video. Write a comment if you have an opinion to share, and of course subscribe for future videos just like this one if this is something that you enjoy. I intend to do a narrated New York City story every Sunday to go along with my regular New York City uploads. Anyway, I am here today to tell you about the Grand Street Bridge in Maspeth, Queens, which connects the boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn over the Newtown Creek. I am currently in Queens, and when I cross the bridge, I will be in Brooklyn. There is a reason that I am filming the Grand Street Bridge today, and that is because the city is close to getting a final bid to replace this bridge. So I may well be filming the last footage of this particular bridge. If you search through YouTube, there isn't any footage of the Grand Street Bridge. Not that I could find anyway. I mean, a few of us, myself included, have filmed ourselves walking across the bridge while we were walking the neighborhoods, so some footage does exist, but none specifically for the bridge itself. The original bridge to be built here was made in 1875, and it was a wooden structure. Of course, traffic back then would have consisted mostly of people walking or riding on horseback, with boats passing by under the bridge. That particular bridge was poorly maintained, however, and the dilapidated bridge was replaced 15 years later in 1890 with another wooden structure. By 1898, the War Department had declared the bridge to be an obstruction to navigation. A plan was developed the following year, and in the year 1900, work began on the current bridge. Some reports say that the bridge was opened in 1902, but the New York government website states that it was open in February 1903. So what I am walking across today is a structure that was built between 118 and 121 years ago. If you were stood on the bridge with me, you would quickly realize just how old the bridge is. Every car that passes, or worse still, trucks and buses, the pedestrian walkway bounces up and down. I'm not sure how much the video footage will show of the bridge rattling and bouncing. The gimbal will probably straighten that out. But you will probably see the railing shaking. You might also have seen the warning already not to eat anything that comes from the creek. The bottom line is, it is a bit scary crossing this bridge on foot, knowing that you are walking on a pathway that hasn't been updated in the 120 years that the bridge has been here. The last place on earth that I would ever want to be is dropping into the Newtown Creek, and you will find out why shortly. In fact, the walkway on the other side of the bridge is even worse. There is one section where you can barely fit one person walking on it. By now you have probably seen the structures in the water to the side of the bridge. I'm not entirely sure what to call them. Would it be a trestle? Anyway, the reason that it is there is because this bridge is called a swing bridge, meaning that any time traffic can be stopped on both sides of the bridge, and the bridge can swing open at a 90-degree angle to allow shipping to pass by the bridge. With that being said though, the bridge hasn't opened since 2012. That was the year that New York got hit by Hurricane Sandy. And while nothing has ever been said as to why the bridge hasn't opened since 2012, it is likely related to the hurricane. And of course, the long age of the bridge itself. Now, I don't profess to be a bridge aficionado. As I mentioned earlier, soon this bridge will no longer be here anymore. And my purpose here today, as daft as it may sound, is to film the bridge so that one day, perhaps long after I am gone, future generations can still appreciate what the bridge once looked like. Not just in images, but with an actual virtual walk across the span of the bridge. People who are really into bridges can Google this one for the minute details of the structure, because I am sure that I wouldn't do it justice anyway. The 120-year-old Grand Street Bridge, barely touched since it was made all of those decades ago, and in the next year or two, it will be here no longer. At some point, you are going to see a boat patrolling the Newtown Creek. I wasn't wearing my glasses, so I couldn't exactly see what was written on the boat. But all I could think of was, I would not want to get splashed with that water down below. Do you want to hear about the Newtown Creek? It isn't pretty by any means. It is one of the most polluted industrial sites in the USA, which includes 30 million gallons of spilled oil. I will try my hardest not to sensationalize the story, but it is going to be hard to not do that simply because of the filth that is in the creek. If you have ever ridden the Q54 bus or the Q59, then you know what's up. If you pick the wrong day, then the stench coming from this creek is simply putrid. Worse still, if it is a hot day, and the bus driver is being a dick by not turning the AC on, you're already stifling hot, and then this stench comes wafting through the open windows. The creek was originally used by Native Americans. You know, the ones who were here for centuries before Columbus discovered America. It got its name from the first British and Dutch settlers in the mid-1600s, when the area itself was in fact called Newtown. As you can see from the surrounding area, this is a heavily industrialized location. Dating back to as far as 1860, the creek was used for transporting goods from the factories to other cities along the canal map. DeWitt Clinton, who designed the Erie Canal, lived right next to the creek. By the mid-1860s, the creek saw heavy traffic as more and more factories were built in the area. John D. Rockefeller decided that Standard Oil would be refined in the Newtown Creek area, and by the 1880s it was processing 3 million gallons of crude oil per week. The creek was used for pipelines and tanks, and in addition to that, there were factories producing sulfuric acid, paint, and varnish. Guess where all of the waste from these companies ended up? You got it. Right here in Newtown Creek. We are talking raw materials here as well. Guess what else was being dumped into Newtown Creek starting in 1866? Raw sewage. There were retaining walls built around the creek, and the shipping channel was maintained by dredging. But the banks of the creek at low tide had a nice healthy dose of sludge acid built upon it. The New York Times at the end of the 19th century claimed that the creek was now devoid of any life form. Chemical plants and copper smelting facilities also made use of dumping their waste into the creek. The largest smelting company was the Laurel Hill Chemical Works, owned by Phelps Dodge. In 1986, their site was sold to the United States Postal Service, who soon discovered the damage from the heavy metal waste. The sale was voided by the court, and Phelps Dodge were ordered to clean up the site. 30 plus years later, this has still not been done. In regards to oil, prior to 1950, more petroleum was spilled into the creek than the Exxon Valdez oil spill. BP, Chevron, and ExxonMobil have since removed about half of the 12 million gallons that were spilled into the creek. Think about that for a minute. Half of it. That means that there are only 6 million gallons to be cleaned up. In the early 1970s, a plant that was producing fertilizer from butcher's discards for about 120 years was charged with contaminating the creek by discarding animal fat directly into it. And in the late 70s, the Coast Guard discovered the Greenpoint oil spill. A discharge that lasted for 30 more years and eventually spilled 3 times the amount of oil that was spilled by the Exxon Valdez oil spill. It's crazy to think about, really, isn't it? All of this going into one creek. Just to top it all off, in the early 2000s, construction companies were found to be dumping concrete slurry into the creek via a secret pipe. It's quite a mess, isn't it? You would think that in today's day and age, everything is now being treated correctly, wouldn't you? Indeed, there is a sewage treatment facility right at the side of the creek. However, overflows occur at the facility on a weekly basis. Let me finish by reading this quote to you, taken directly from Wikipedia. And then you let me know if you would like to go swimming in New York Harbor. When sewage loads exceed the capacity of the Newtown Creek sewage treatment facility, trash, pesticides, petroleum products, PCBs, mercury, cadmium, lead, pathogenic microorganisms, and nutrients, which reduce the dissolved oxygen content of the water, are dumped into Newtown Creek. This dumping is referred to as a combined sewer overflow, or CSO. CSOs can be triggered by as little as 1/10 of an inch of rain. Essentially anything that gets washed into the New York gutters from the street, anything that households and businesses flush down the toilet or dump down the drain, has a fair chance of being expelled directly into Newtown Creek or Newtown Harbor untreated. In New York City, a CSO event occurs once a week on average, discharging approximately 500 million gallons of raw sewage directly into New York Harbor. CSOs are the single largest impairment to the quality of New York City's waters. It totally amazes me that birds still use the creek to feed, but they do, as you will see right at the end of the video. Now, does anyone want a glass of water from my New York City tap? Or perhaps you would prefer the bottled water instead?